Welcome at a new video of 5x6 chess, a smaller board with bigger options for you.
Small but mighty.
So check it out. Here I move the move b3 and my opponent reacts with the move e6. Very passive, as I plan to move my bishop here anyway. That's what I indicate with my first move. Maybe he should have gone for this move or this move, immediately targeting my b3 pawn. For example, this already would have been an option, right? Because if the takes, this rook is already being threatened and pinned. So, but this could be a way the game could have been progressed. I think a good option for black. But my opponent went for the e4 move. So, like I indicated, I will fianchetto here and my opponent comes up with this move, trying to blockade the diagonal of the bishop. Looks like a good move, but already my position feels a bit better. But I shouldn't become too comfortable, and I do make a big mistake here with the move c3. Offering a trade, because I thought this might already be a good position for me, or even take back with the knight, getting some great squares for the knight. But my opponent had a better idea, and that was to push the pawn even further. And maybe I should have locked up the position here right away, but as there's not much room for black to break through, and my king side is quite safe over here, and I was thinking that if my opponent would ever take here, then I will simply take back with the queen, and then my position is quite good. And I don't really want to take here, because after taking back, this file is super weak for me. Already threatening a checkmate in 2. And if I would make a random move, this is already a check and checkmate. So, and if you think, well, maybe you should make room for your queen, doesn't really work either, because the pawn also takes care of this square, and this is a checkmate as well. So the only move in this position would be to go here, protecting this square, but after takes, and takes, the queen will go here and here with the same ideas. So taking the pawn is definitely not an option. So instead I play the move c4. But my pawn now gets within reach of both the knight and the pawn. Only upside is that my bishop now has a nice diagonal here. And like I said, you don't really want to take here, because then my queen suddenly gets quite active. My opponent went for a smart decision, and that's to take the pawn, and after taking back, the knight gets very active, attacking the bishop. And I was thinking about this move. The upside of the move is that my bishop is centralized. One of the middle game principles is to centralize your pieces, so in that case it's good. But the downside is that my knight really cannot develop here. And when the knight cannot develop, my rook can't develop either, so this would be a big problem. So instead I went for the defense of my bishop. Just leave it over here, and that was basically the only other option. And I think a great move for my opponent would have been to move the rook over here, attacking the bishop now twice. And I can't defend it another time, so it either has to go here, and then I have the same issue with not being able to develop my knight, because my bishop blocks a square, the pawn blocks a square, and this field is protected. But this seems to be my only option, because it's now defended by the queen, and that might be my escape. And this could be another option, but then probably my opponent will not take and just let the position be. Instead, my opponent went for another nice move, and that's playing the bishop here. And I was contemplating about this move, attacking the bishop, but I think my opponent has a strong move here, and that is rook over here. And if I were to take, then my opponent can take my bishop, and the knight is being attacked. So it has to move back, and then this pawn is hanging. But this would have been a good resource as well. After taking back, it looks like I still have a good position, maybe even better. Instead, I played my knight over here, forcing the knight to make a decision, either to take my knight or the bishop. Going back is not really an option here. Doesn't really look very strong. So my opponent decides to take the bishop. Makes a lot of sense, because my bishop was stronger in the end, and I take back with the queen. And here my opponent gets the open file. What should I do? Think this is a good move, attacking both pawns, bringing in the rook, but I saw a very nice idea. And that's what I executed. Knight to b5. Never pin your own pieces. And I do it anyway. Is it stupid? Yeah, it might be stupid, but I did calculate this, and check it out, because this is a beautiful sequence of moves. Here, my opponent decides to attack my knight once more, which makes a lot of sense. It is pinned, attack it once more, try to actually win it. Well, there's basically one move I have in this position, and that's rook to b1, protecting my knight. And now it seems very straightforward. Bishop here attacking my knight 3 times now. And maybe you think, okay, this is winning, black wins a piece, game over. No, it's not the case, because there's a beautiful tactic. And I play my knight here. Beautiful, beautiful. With a check on the king and also a fork on the queen. So, if my opponent goes here, for example, I can simply take the queen. And if my opponent takes my queen, I take his rook. And yes, he takes my knight, but I'm up in material here. Instead, my opponent decided to take my knight, but now this rook hangs, because this was also an X-ray attack on the rook. See? Check, takes, and I have a check here. But after this check, my opponent has 4 pawns against 3 on this side, and a bishop against the rook. So maybe I'm 1 point ahead, but with good play, maybe this should be holdable. King goes here, and first I was like, well, I can go maybe here, but if my opponent were to take here, my king can never escape, and this is surely not winning for me. Maybe even black is better. But instead I took this pawn first, and if my opponent were to take here, I take this pawn with a check, and I pick up this pawn, and this looks like a way better position for me. Although this might be holding, because after a position like this, my king is simply boxed in, and this bishop will land here, protect the pawn, and I can give a lot of checks, but the king will just keep on walking away from the checks, and that should be a draw. But my opponent decided to take the pawn like this, which I wouldn't recommend. Always keep your pawn structure intact if you can. So taking the pawn might have been better, although maybe my opponent did have a good idea in mind here, because if you take like this, there's not a lot of access squares for my king, as these access routes are all blockaded now. Still, I moved the pawn forward because it was under attack, and here my opponent moves his pawn forward. Maybe I could have gone here, but then the bishop would have landed here. And great tip, if you can, box the king in an endgame. That's a really good idea. Here my king cannot move, and yeah, this king will simply run some circles, but this is a draw. So I have to bring my king into the game first. And after this check, I continue getting my king further into the game. And I want to go for a trade of the bishop, because if I ever would, so let's say king here, were to take the bishop, this all of a sudden looks like a very good position for me. And I pick up these pawns sooner or later. This looks winning. But my opponent made a great move here, attacking the rook. And now I have to go to the side or here. Probably the best move would have been to simply go here. But then after king moves here and my king moves in, my opponent can move the bishop over here, preventing a trade of the rook against the pawn at any time. And my king simply cannot enter my opponent's camp. So I decided to go here, hoping that my opponent would give me some time, but he started chasing my rook. And I attacked the pawn, he chases my rook again, and ended up in a draw. But still, I think some really nice moves. So play the 5x6 chess yourself, check it out, and don't forget to like, subscribe. See you, bye bye.